All right, welcome to Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the standards, stigmas, and systems. We want to give a special shout out to co-host EJ Stewart, to boss lady Jennifer Pope from J Pope and Associates, and we have a great guest on for today. Once again, we're taking time just to kind of continue to highlight African American success stories of how they made it through what they had to overcome to get to where they are now. This is something to provide a positive aspect because in this day and age where we consistently see, things that affect African American men, we want to make sure that we highlight the positive and things that are going well and not always the things that's going bad. So I want to take the time to introduce to you Brother Brandon Lockett, and I'm going to turn it over to him so that he can kind of share a little bit about his background, a little bit of information what he do and his business that he runs.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I'm the CEO of Neutron Engineering. We're based out of Columbia, Maryland. Essentially, we're a global entity. We're not, to any particular locale in terms of our business focus, but we are specialists in cloud engineering, cybersecurity, high performance computing, IT solutions, and services overall. So rewind quite a bit. I grew up in East Baltimore, what's affectionately known as Deaky Land, the 1000 block at McDonough Street.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun, man. It's crazy to think back to those days, and like we were poor as I don't know what, and we had no clue.
Right.
It's like sometimes you wonder, like, was my mom a magician or something, or the fake out was real,
Mm-hmm.
and you wonder, like, when you look back at those days and you say, man, we come a long way. I think, it's a testament to my mom, my grandmom, and my family who really put effort into supporting me in ways that money could not. And I think it should not be missed upon those of us who, are reaching towards success. It's difficult to say successful. I look at success as a destination, as a livelihood, and as a lifestyle, not as a destination. But when you look at sort of what they did back then, it's challenging to think that it was all me, because it absolutely wasn't. So one of the things I talk about oftentimes is my grandmother. She was very big into motivation by self, just knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and not fearing failure. And she was big in telling me, she said, if you fail, it's okay. Just don't fail at the same thing twice. That's it. And that stuck with me. I would think I was 7. And I don't know what football team it was, or was baseball, something like that. I was a little scrawny dude, couldn't make weight, 100 pounds, soaking wet. And literally, I think that's what it was Madison Square for 7'9". And I thought I wasn't going to make it because I was getting mashed out there. And I came home bruised up, limping every practice. And I remember this one practice, it was pouring down, raining. And my grandmother said, "You going?" I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, go ahead, get going." And I made the team. And it was crazy. One of the things when I came back, and she says, that showed heart. And that's what the coach will see. So, those little anecdotes that she left with me, dude, are like implanted. So now when I walk into a business meeting, it doesn't matter who's across the table. I'm not intimidated.
Dealing with the storms.
Right. And that lack of intimidation. Nothing good.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. It's not arrogance, and I think some people mistake that. But coming from where I come from, it's a little tough. So walking into these scenarios I walk into now, having those anecdotes with me really make me feel that I can compete, and then also I can conquer. So, fast forward a little bit, I went to Elmary Henderson. I went to Furley, lived in Sedonia for about a year and a half, moved back to Deaky Land, went to Northeast, catching the 5, hoping not to get on the wrong bus. wanted to get back home one piece. You know, Herm Run was like 5 times the size of Northeast, and you know how that went. And Dunbar, man, really was a pivotal point in my life. The biotechnology program, you know, Mr. Green and the 1,001 lessons he taught every morning. You know, you can everything business wise and accounting. You can just hear him saying something in the back of your head when you're looking at your books. That general ledger, look at that. You know, but you know, I did an internship my senior year at the Christopher Columbus Center for Marine Biotechnology. Myself and Katrina Parker, and we were exposed to real genetics in a real wet lab with a postdoc from University of Maryland, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. You know, I was like, I was I'm gonna cure cancer. You know, I'm gonna do something great. And after we finished the wet lab aspect, we had to take the results to the data scientist in a different part of the lab, and he had this mini computer. And I walked in, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is different." And he started showing me his architecture. It was a silicon graphics machine. They don't really make them anymore, but it was the you know, supercomputers of the day. Mm-hmm. And he started showing me what he was doing, and I really became just nailed into what he was doing. I'm like, wow, that was the end of my genetics career. Like that day, it ended for me, right? And so it was crazy because I became a sponge. I was just asking this guy 1,000,001 questions, and he just started letting me drive, just like working through some logic. I mean, I'm 16, 17. Have no clue what this guy was doing, but he sat down and rocked out. So I took that on to college. I did an undergrad at Johns Hopkins, master's at Johns Hopkins in IT. Did an MBA as well. The master's in IT and the bachelor's in IT was really natural to me. Technology to me just came natural. The business side kicked my behind. It did not come natural at all. It was, you know, in terms of the analytics of business, in terms of the formalities of business, you know, business sense, I was cool with that. But operations management, making decisions based on various metrics was different. It's something I hadn't been exposed to. And so that was super challenging, but I learned a lot. I know I hear it in out there right now a lot, especially with the VCs. You know, don't hire an MBA. They think they.
Now, hold up. Go back.
VCs.
What's a VC?
Oh, sorry.
For the people who don't know what a VC is.
Yeah. Venture capitalists.
Okay.
So the people that are funding startups.
Got you.
A number of them, a lot of them are anti-MBA, right? And part of it I understand because they like the grassroots hustler, right? When you have an idea and it's your passion and you take that passion, you run with it. Yeah, they have this it factor that makes them successful by any means necessary. So I get it. But to immediately impugn those who had to learn business and literally decided to do a degree associated with business just because they did a degree associated with business, to me, it's asinine. But you know, but I see it a lot in that world. Fortunately for me, I didn't start with any VC money. You know, I started with I'm working and I'm building my business at the same time. But I set a date on the calendar and said, listen, come hell or high water, that date, we're full-time Neutron. Right. We missed it by like 3 months, but we got there. You know, so we turned that corner. You know, in terms of, you know, just navigating challenges and getting into business, I think the biggest part of it really is the concept of finance and how easily you can mess up. And, you know, ways that you can actually operate without having a trust fund, because the banks are going to look at you crazy, you know, when you come in there and say, I have no money, but I have a great idea. You know? So really, it's that concept, I think, is challenging for people that actually will go to a venture capitalist and say, hey, take 50% of my revenue for the next 10 years to give me enough money to get started. which in my mind, I just couldn't wrap my head around. Right. But in some worlds, some businesses, you have to do that. Luckily for me, the way that we built Neutron, we were able to do so and get to a means where we can be successful over time, quarter after quarter after quarter, and just build a company without having to go and get a lot of money from, venture capitalists. Eventually having a relationship with a bank where we can do some other things. I can talk for days, guys. I want to make too much time without you guys asking some questions or kind of formatting what direction you want to go.
No problem.
No, that's why we're here, man. Part of the joy of doing this is understanding your world, and getting other people to get light into your world. And I was going to ask you, why did you say you were fortunate to not go through a venture capitalist, but, and then you talked about gradually getting to where you wanted to go. But, if I was a young you coming up, I was a young Brandon coming up, what would that look like, or what advice would you give to someone like me, or not me, but a young you trying to come up and get where you are?
Yeah. So I think, if I rewind 20 years, I would say focus on your craft, master your craft, and ignore the competition. Because competition will be there. If you focus on it too much, you're going to run into it. If you ignore it and keep being great, you'll go around it, through it, over top of it, under it. It just won't matter. And at some point, even when you talk about the IBMs of the world, Amazons of the world, there's enough money out here for everybody. And even when you look at a multi-$100 billion company, they're just as hungry in some levels as we are. Because if you take that triangle and you turn it upside down and you go down to those lower level business units, they're either making money or they're getting cut. So they're no different than a startup at that level. They're no different than a small company at that level. So if you ignore the notion that they're there and just do what you do, that is a recipe for success. And I know some folks are like, no, you got to know who your competition is. You got to know they're there. You got to know what they do. That's true. But if you're focused on them and focused on trying to outpace them, right, you're putting too much energy into them. And I think for me early on, I was looking at what other people and other organizations were doing to try to learn how to be successful. The problem was a lot of them were sub-business units of bigger companies. If I wasn't going to do that, then looking at how they operated was just a bad recipe.
Come back in.
So, I think that's one of the things. We break up again?
Yeah, you back now.
Gotcha. So I was saying that, that's somewhat of a recipe for failure, because they may have a decent funding source behind them that you may not have. And so the decisions that they make are different. I would say for me, if I wanted to navigate some of the challenges that I had back then, is really focusing on the craft, but then looking as far forward as you can in terms of where the technology is going. A lot of folks don't go to conferences. I would say I go to one conference per year, right? And as you look at the decade, you break it up into quarters. Every 2.5 years or so, you can really get a sense of what IT player is leading the market. Go to their conference. Don't go to 15 different trainings. Go to the leaders market. Right now, it's Amazon. Amazon's killing everybody because they can.
Hello.
A storm.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the storms and stuff.
Consuming so much.
All right, you back?
Yeah, it's a big storm like coming up right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can see the lightning. The lightning is flashing off to my left. I'm like, yeah, that's a big storm. So I was saying, literally, the Amazon right now is that leader. Prior to Amazon, for me, it was Cisco, my Cisco system. So Amazon, me and my guys, so my lead engineer and one of my other SMEs every year, and we pick one person out from the team other than those two that'll go to the conference every year. I say, you go to that conference and immerse yourself in that technology for that week, 4 days, or whatever it is. And really, you get a really good sense of where the market is going, right? Why? Because they technically own the market, so they're dictating it. Definitely. So the stuff they're telling you is what they're going to push for the next couple quarters. Then that's where it's going. Go that way, right? If you want to compete with them, that's fine, but they have $500 billion, right? So either you're going to find a way to get enough money to compete with a $500 billion organization, or you figure out where they're going and you make a couple $100 million as they go along, right? So I would say that's somewhat a path that I would take. And we did that in a number of ways. I would have invested more back then. I think we had the ability to do it. I was just more cautious about the expense. I am now, where I'm like, no, we're going. We're going a day early, right? Before it was like we show up the day of the conference because you don't pay the hotel that, a day early, relax,
sleep in the car, maybe.
Yeah, right. Do something else, But yeah, definitely now go and immerse and get there. So that's kind of the thought process. I think for someone who's jumping into this business, that's what I think I would steer them toward.
Would you say that you faced, like, were there any like blatant like kind of things that like barriers for you to kind of continue to grow your business, and how did you overcome those barriers that you might have come against, especially in the tech world, where you don't see too many of us kind of leading an organization.
It's interesting. One of the I want to say most valuable experiences I had was with a racist narcissist. It was a person who owned a company who was the prime. They had the prime contract. Even though that person was racist and a narcissist, the fact that I was good.
Hello, come back. You back?
Yeah,
we got
that
you.
facial expression was horrible.
Storm hating on you.
It is, dude. I'm looking at it. But so no, I'm saying that he it didn't matter. I was a vehicle for revenue. So revenue came before his racist narcissism, right? He just made it clear that he didn't like me.
Oh, wow.
But that didn't matter, right? But the beauty of it was I learned what not to do in business from this guy. And as successful as he was, the vast majority of his success came because of what I would say, not illegal, but shady operations, right? He made things happen through shady operations. And I learned that later, but that's the reason why he amassed a decent fortune. Now, if you scratch that part of it and say, regardless of how he did it, what else caused his demise, so to speak? What else caused his company not to grow to where it could have been? Is that racist narcissism. When you hate a group of people so much that even though you know that entity can make you more residuals, you'll do your best to make sure that residual is mostly yours. When the source of that funding starts to point more toward the other entity, that's when you start to really look at yourself and say, you know what? I'm going to cut that. Even if it's a couple $1 million, because you're not getting a shine for it. Right. And I think that really was the beginning of the end for that dude. But
that was the narcissism.
He couldn't help it. He couldn't help it. As long as he was the man on campus and I was just this guy making some crazy stuff happen in the background, cool. But when the shine started to come up, like, oh, you built that? Yeah. Oh, okay. Can you do it again? Sure. Can you do it 12 times? Sure. But then he looks at it like, well, he's not getting a shine for it anymore because they're coming direct to me now. So it was one of those things where it was the weirdest thing to have a business relationship where someone that you knew hated you because of the color of your skin. it was weird, but I learned a lot, to be honest. Just working at that person on a daily basis. The one other thing in terms of barriers, obviously, one of the largest barriers of entry in any market is capital. And starting out, I had operational funds just because I was saving and working, but not much capital. The emergence of the cloud intersected with my business operation, such that if you take, in terms of capital, right? Let's say you have $2 million worth of gear. And you take that $2 million, you flip it horizontally, and you chop it up into operational expenses. Well, I can afford that. Right? Now, if you come back to that $2 million, I couldn't chalk out the $2 million. Who could? IBM, Amazon, Red Hat, Microsoft. They could do that, and it was in the noise. The cloud came along and gave us the opportunity to where I could get that $2 million in hardware and just pay for it monthly, and it not be nowhere close to $2 million, right? Through the automation and just technologies that allow you to efficiently use those resources so that they don't really amount up to that $2 million, but the performance is. So that was a big barrier that smashed right before my eyes, as it started to amass. So now 90% of my architecture is cloud, right? Wow. Well, I used to have servers in my basement for what? I mean, we've got high performance stuff at the office because we have to, but a lot of the other stuff is in the cloud.
You talked about the impact of your grandmother and just having the wherewithal and the gumption to kind of just push through. But taking these big risks and maybe having the family and being the leader of a household, and how do you balance having that over your shoulder, but still being able to say, you know what, I can make it happen?
Yeah. It is a thought strategy on a daily that you assess action, you implement the activity, and you assess on a daily. I would say diversification gives a level of comfort, but in my opinion, as someone who's not a trust fund baby, kind of relaxing is risky. And I don't take it for granted that the opportunities that I've had, especially as a result of the education that she gave, I think it makes me more acutely aware of my responsibility to do my best. And the result of that is the ability to take care of my family. So it's that part of it really is knowing that there's a 4'6" Baptist preacher in heaven with her arms folded, doing that little rock and hum. And I just, I know she's looking. So it just, and I have to tell myself sometimes, often, like my doctor said a couple years ago, can you make an agreement with me to sleep at least 6 hours every day for 3 days straight, please? Because I would just rock, and that's not sustainable, and I know, grandma would say, well, you got to rest yourself, or God will rest your body for you. And you don't want that, but I'm also here now in the background saying, do your best and bless somebody, do your best and take care of somebody, bring somebody with you. And so now I've got a team of people who have families. Like, we started out, I was only one half, I was an old guy. Now everybody got kids, right? So, and so they look to me as their leader to say, man, listen, I got you. We're going to make some really cool things happen. And we're going to have fun. We're going to work hard. We're going to work smart. But we're going to make it happen. And I think that's another part of it that keeps you rocking. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely did. Definitely. Without giving too much sauce to the competitors that we're not worried about. What are some things you guys got brewing going forward, and just staying? You talked about staying innovative with the industry, but what are some things that you got going and what do you envision coming up next for you guys?
Yes, so we're working with a couple entities right now to reinforce artificial intelligence-based threat detection. And what that is humans inherently are slow. And it's not that computers are faster than our brains, it's that our ability to react and engage is slower than a computer's ability to react and engage. So what we're looking at right now is, in terms of the cyber threat, especially with ransomware and things like that, what we're looking at is working with other organizations to be able to say, we are going to detect, due to anomaly detection, something happened that was more than 1 or 2 standard deviations away from the norm, meaning something happened and it's not normal for you. If your organization will take the risk in us stopping that from happening and saying, hey, maybe that email was normal, maybe that keystroke was normal, but we want to be careful. A lot of organizations will say, yeah, we're with that. Then cool. So what we do is we build basically a math model. We work with entities that build a math model that'll say, that's not normal, stop it. That didn't require me to wake up and click any buttons, right? It voided the whole reactionary approach of traditional antivirus software, which is based on signatures, which is, I saw something a week ago, I threw some reverse engineer guys on it, they knocked out a signature, sent it to everybody, you downloaded it on your computer, installed it, and now you can detect it. Well, in that week of time, you could have got hit already.
Right.
So I think that's a big part of where the industry is going. I think the adversaries are making too much money for it to stop. You talk hundreds of billions of dollars. My estimation, looking at the data, by 2025, they're going to be $1 trillion industry.
Wow.
And so why would you stop? It's too easy, right? Literally, you can go online, you can download something, do a find and replace to create your own exploit. It's that simple. So if you're in a country that is not going to literally do anything to you, right? Interpol has no ability to implement actions on anybody or indict anybody or lock anybody up. You're not getting extradited anywhere. Then what's the downside? You spent 8 hours versus 8 hours of gaming. You spent 8 hours of trying to hack somebody or get an exploit to get clicked on, right? The other side of that is, again, gift and a curse. The cloud gave me the ability to evade basically a barrier to entry. It did the same thing for them. So if you're in the middle of Uzbekistan and you log into a cafe somewhere, you got $500. Well, I'm going to buy $500 of computers to run some sort of an exploit. That's a lot of computing power for 15 minutes, right? And after that 15 minutes is up, it goes away. How do you trace it? It's gone, right? So these guys have equivalent capabilities due to technology enhancements. So I would say a big part of where we're going is we're focusing on AI from a cyber perspective.
Wow. You talking big money, big money tech there, brother.
I mean, but I think this is something that we kind of need to talk about because you know, we are accessing the internet and accessing so much information that sometimes we're not really secure in what we're doing. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of us are not secure from a technical standpoint.
I know I'm not.
Yeah, my lawyer hates it when I say it, but technically, you know, there's no such thing as a secure network. When you're connected to the internet,
everything's open.
Your computer has a significant degree amount of exposure. Now you can reduce it, right? You can shrink it down. It's just like thinking about the SR-71, right? So the plane flew higher, faster. So you couldn't see it, you couldn't track it. And then all of a sudden it got shot down, right? It's because it left signatures over time that people started to figure out. So even though you're doing due diligence, you're downloading updates, you're applying firewall rules, at some point it's going to get figured out. And if you're a target, right, and there's two different approaches to cyber, in my opinion. You've got a direct target and you have target of opportunity. Most are targets of opportunity. It's you're on the internet, you click something bad, right? And a significant amount of that is porn. You know, people clicking on free porn. Got them every time. Every time.
Get them every time.
It is so predictable for some of my customers, and it's like they don't think we know. You know, I know everything about your network, right? Like,
Come on, brother.
You're not encrypting it. I can see it, right?
Come on, brother.
So, like I told you, if you're going to do it, pay for it, because those paid entities don't want to they want to keep getting their money, so they're going to protect it like a Microsoft will protect their environment, or something like that. So that part is just wild for me.
So what would be some I guess some basic ways that people can protect themselves when it comes to just kind of utilizing the internet and just kind of, as you say, diminishing the accessibility?
Yeah. So the average person, really the gist is update your software. Mm-hmm. Do your best to avoid clicking on shady stuff. I gave a briefing last week. The phishing attacks, phishing is essentially you get an email. It may have a link in it. It looks normal from like Bank of America or from Yahoo or from Apple. It looks normal, but it's not. It's fake. And they want you to click on something that then either implants something or takes information, or both. So in those scenarios, the best thing to do, easiest thing to do, it's really simple. Put your cursor over the email address where it came from and hover, and it'll show you. If that doesn't match who you think it is, it's fake, right? The other part is stop being so quick. Like, really be judicious and careful. And I tell my clients, don't open email until you've been awake for an hour in the morning. Like, especially my salespeople. If you sell anything, I don't care what it is, and you're a salesperson, don't open email until you've been awake for an hour and have had a cup of coffee. Because salespeople are notorious. They see an email come in. If it seems like it's from a customer, oh yeah, boom. My computer won't turn back on. Hey, Brandon, my computer says I need to send about 1,000 Bitcoin to somebody. Yeah. Can you decrypt it? Okay. The math behind decrypting the encryption that they installed is a very, very, very big number of combinations.
Wow.
So it's not that it's impossible. It'll take me 15, 20 years with a massive computer to do it. So the idea would be proactive, right? Back your data up. Even with backups is a little catchy, but try not to fall for the phishing scams. Don't use dictionary words for your passwords. Don't use your kids' names, any of that kind of stuff. I would say today go with 12 characters, upper letters, lowers, characters, and numbers. But know and be conscious of not duplicating. Because let's just say, as I gave an example to one of my newer customers who did not believe that cyber was a real thing. And the only reason why they are customers is because their insurance company told them they had to.
Wow.
So insurance companies are now saying you have a cyber protection policy or rider. In order for us to check that box, you have to have an audit and an IT professional sign their name on the audit. Well,
come on.
They can find bills.
Are we back?
Yeah, man. So yeah, they had to have an audit, and they couldn't find anybody to do it because they were just trying to find somebody that they knew that can say yes.
To sign it off on it.
Right. So I did the analysis and I said, these are the things you have to do. And by the way, your email is compromised. Say what? How do you know that? And I showed him the dark web, like your password is on the dark web being sold. And immediately he was like, wow, how'd that happen? I was like, well, you registered the same password with Park Mobile as you did with everything else. Park Mobile got exploited about 3 weeks ago, and they got you using the password, and now they're using it in other places. He's like, oh, okay. So a little bit of a reality check. It's just that simple. If you duplicate the use of passwords, that's what can happen. So I know when I say it to people, are like, oh my God, I've got to have like 30 passwords. Yeah, write them down.
Yeah, and even if you forget them, like me, just kind of reset it.
You made that very relatable, and I think that was very dope in the sense of saying, take some time and wake up and check yourself. Just everyday things that make sense to everyday people. And I think praising you in where you came from and not forgetting that in where you are. You could just hear it all over you. You know what I mean? So I think that's super dope, super awesome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, this stuff does not have to be super complicated. That's my job. All right. I tell my customers all the time, I'm not going to come talk technicalese to you. That gets me nowhere to confuse my client.
Right.
I can talk to my peers like that all day, but talking to my client, we have to make it simple. And one of my smartest professors always said, if you can't explain it in layman's terms, you don't understand it yourself.
Right.
So don't do it. Right. And so I tell folks all the time, do the simple stuff to protect yourself. They'll move over because they don't want a difficult fight because there's so many suckers out there.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want a difficult fight. So even your cell phones, keep your smartphones up to date. Don't skip it and say, oh, I'll update it later. They're fixing something. Software is inherently broken. When software is created, it's created with problems and vulnerabilities. When those updates come, they're fixing those. So now you'll get more what we call, undocumented features, but they'll fix those at some point too.
I feel like he's talking directly to me.
Checkbox.
He's talking directly to me. I'm triggered, guys, as they say.
Checkbox.
Cool. But man, this has been some helpful information. I'm definitely we're gonna have to get you back on because I got a lot of questions with like this tech piece because it's so much that you can talk about with like the way things are moving and how fast things are moving. And I feel like if you're not like even kind of paying attention, like you're gonna be like when the internet first came out, some people are gonna be like that, and they ain't gonna know what to do.
Yeah, it turns over so quickly. Your skills oftentimes can expire, right? Because it's changing so quickly. It's speeding up. But for me, that's fun. It is fun. It is. I learned certain technologies 20 years ago that I wouldn't even touch right now.
Right.
But things like Linux, it's the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same. Baseline and approach to it is the same, but it's like that's never changed. But other things I have, so that's really why I really enjoy this industry and what I'm doing. It's hard being the CEO and not being able to put a lot of my time into the tech. I got to split it 50-50. That is challenging. So we'll make some decisions over the next couple of years to how that's going to go. But I'm still enjoying.
That's a good challenge, though, right?
Absolutely.
That's a good challenge.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, man, once again, we want to just thank you for taking time out of your schedule. This kind of helping us to understand a little bit more about this tech space and just kind of what it is that you're doing with your business and the success that you've reached thus far and the coming successes that you will have. So once again, thanks again for joining us today.
Anytime, brother. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Likewise.
We also want to thank you for joining us this week for Unapologetically Male, where we talk about surviving standards, stigmas, and systems. Be sure to catch us each and every week as we continue to share our story, share African American males' success story. As we, because we hear all the negatives, but we need to continue to hear positive and put that positive vibe and positive affirmations out there so that people can hear it and so people can see that we are doing great things and not the negative that's always being spoken of. So